Hare Krishna, welcome. So, we'll be discussing from Bhagavad Gita, second chapter, text 23 today. So, before we start, we'll chant the Jai Radha Madhava. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare बलराम की जय, श्री श्री निताय गौरांग की जय, श्री श्री श्रीनिवास गोविंद की जय, श्री प्रहलाद नरसिंहदेव की जय, जगत गुरु शिला प्रभुपाद की जय, निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे। हरि हरि बोल। Hare Krishna. Thank you for joining. So before we start, we'll start with reciting the Lord's name. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Hare Krishna. So we'll be discussing from second chapter Bhagavad Gita, text 23rd. So I will recite the words and then we will read the translation and purport, and we'll discuss further few points that Prabhupada is mentioning. So the second chapter, text 23rd from Bhagavad Gita. I'll recite the words. Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavakaha, na chainam kledayanti apo, na sosayati marutaha. So I'll repeat. Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavakaha, na chainam kledayanti apo, na sosayati marutaha. Synonyms, translation, and purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Charna Aravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So the word-to-word meanings. Na, never. Enam, unto this soul. Chindanti, cut into pieces. Shastrani, all weapons. Na, never. Enam, unto this soul. Dahati, burns. Pavakaha, fire. Na, never. Cha, also. Enam, unto this soul. Kledayanti, moistens. Apaha, water. Na, never. Sosayati, dries. Marutaha, wind. Translation. The soul can never be cut into pieces by any weapon, nor can he be burned by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by the wind. Purport. All kinds of weapons, swords, flames, rains, tornadoes, etc., are unable to kill the spirit soul. It appears that there were many kinds of weapons made of earth, water, air, ether, etc., in addition to the modern weapons of fire. Even the nuclear weapons of the modern age are classified as fire weapons. But formerly, there were other weapons made of all different types of material elements. Firearms were counteracted by water weapons, which are now unknown to modern science. Nor do modern scientists have knowledge of tornado weapons. Nonetheless, the skull can never be cut into pieces, nor annihilated by any number of weapons, regardless of scientific devices. Nor was it ever possible to cut the individual souls from the original soul. The Mayavadi, however, cannot describe how the individual soul evolved from ignorance and consequently became covered by illusory energy. Because their atomic individual souls, Sanatana, eternally, they are prone to be covered by the illusory energy, and thus they become separated from the association of the Supreme Lord. Just as the sparks of the fire, although one in quality with the fire, are prone to be extinguished when out of the fire. In the Varaha Purana, the living entities are described as separate parts and parcels of the Supreme. They are eternally so, according to the Bhagavad Gita also. So, even after being liberated from illusion, the living entity remains a separate identity, as is evident from the teachings of the Lord to Arjuna. Arjuna became liberated by the knowledge received from Krishna, but he never became one with Krishna. Thus ends the purport. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन्निति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा। जय श्री प्रभुपाद। So here we are seeing Krishna is actually mentioning the characteristics of the soul. What is the Lord saying here to Arjuna? He's saying, Nainam chindanti shastrani. Nainam means the soul, na means na enam. Unto the soul, something does not happen. What is that? Chindanti shastrani. It cannot be cut into pieces. And in the same way, there is one more thing Krishna is saying, Nainam dahati pavakaha. Again, na enam. To this soul, something does not happen. What is it that does not happen? Dahati means burn. Pavakaha means fire. So the soul cannot be cut into pieces, neither the soul can be burnt by fire. And then next is saying, Na chainam kledayanti apo. Also, apaha, bhumi rapo analo vayu. Krishna says, right? It is one of the element, the water. He says, Na chainam kledayanti. It does not even get moistened by water. And then na society marutaha. Marutaha means the wind, and society means drying up. So neither the soul can be dried up by the wind; it cannot be evaporated. So Krishna is mentioning so many characteristics here, especially four, saying the soul can never be cut into pieces by any weapon, nor can he be burned by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by the wind. Now, why is Krishna saying all this? As we see from the earlier verses also, in response to Arjuna's you know Arjuna being baffled and completely concerned about not wanting to fight the war, especially of his loved ones, his grandfather Bhishma, his teacher Dronacharya, and so many other, his relations also, his relatives, his uncles, his brothers, his cousins, they were all in the war too, though they were on the opposite side. Arjuna, actually being a very compassionate, very pious soul, very nice person, he was even feeling for his own enemies also. And even though they were his relatives, though they have taken the position of enemy, still he has compassion for his family members, right? Sometimes it happens, somebody does a mistake and it happens to be the same family member. There is a tendency to forgive. Oh, why should I hurt my own family member, right? So it is a very good nature of Arjuna that was actually blocking him from doing his duty. His duty was to fight the war. And in Kshatriya, in the fight, one has to kill. The Kshatriya war means an opponent, one of the party has to die, unless then the victory is not declared. So for Arjuna to win the war, that is his duty, he has to kill all his relatives. And he was very much concerned about his own, grandfather and teacher and all the elderly people. So Krishna started saying, well, Arjuna, see, you seem to be thinking very much on the bodily platform. You're completely missing out on an essential aspect of a person. When you say person, they are not this body. There is the soul within the body. And that is where Krishna starts talking about Arjuna. He sees Arjuna that, you are lamenting for what which a learned person will not lament. It is just like an example is given. If somebody is fell in water and is drowning, and somebody goes jumps into the water and they try to save him, sometimes they try to hold the person's clothes, maybe the outer jacket or something, and it comes off, and it's, they could not get hold of the person, and then things like that, and somehow suddenly they hold the person and they save the person and they're back here. And now if the person who saved is feeling bad, oh, I feel so bad, your jacket was lost while trying to save you in the water. It would seem foolish. What are you talking? The main person is alive. We should be happy about it. Why are you worried about the jacket that was lost? It has no value at all, right? The body, the person, is what is important. In the same way, there is one more layer to the personality. The body itself is also a dress, and there is a soul within the body that is called as Atma. And that is what Krishna is trying to remind Arjuna. Our Vedic culture, our Vedic value was actually Atma Jnana. It was not, Jnana about other things. Other things are secondary, that is needed, for sustenance, learning different arts, skills of livelihood, and taking care of the body also is very important. But the real important being is the soul. And this is something everyone even knows, right? When a person dies, people are very upset, very sad. Oh, the person passed away. Now, if somebody comes and argues, oh, why are you crying? I see the body right here. The whole body, the whole person is right here, right? Why are you all crying? He says, no, 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 he has left the body, right? But that realization only comes, when a person leaves the body, and again we tend to go into forgetfulness. We forget that the person is not actually this body, which is nothing but the lump of matter, but it is the soul. So this is what being called as illusioned. And Arjuna was temporarily being put into an illusion, and he behaved like a very normal person who is not, having this knowledge or awareness of the soul. So Krishna starts speaking to Arjuna in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. He starts to set the foundational principles of our existence. He says we are not this body. Right? Earlier he says Dehinosmin yata dehe kaumaram yavanam jara. The deha is just the body. The soul is what is important, and the soul is constantly changing body. Tata dehantra prapti. At the end of life, the soul takes on another body. And in the earlier verse, we have seen, Vashamshi Jirnani Yata Vihaya. Just like a person gives up old garments and takes on new garments, this body is just like a garment. It's just a covering. And, the soul takes up another body at the end of life. So Krishna is now speaking about the soul. And actually, not just Arjuna, but the total human civilization. Unless they come in touch of spiritual knowledge, unless they come in touch with the spiritual master, or unless they come in touch with Supreme Lord Krishna, who is the eternal, the supreme spiritual master. Krishnam Vande Jagat Guru, right? He is the original spiritual master. And all other spiritual masters are actually, uh, disseminating the exact same knowledge that Krishna has given. Krishna has given this knowledge to Arjuna, he's giving it again. And we are all fortunate, Swami Prabhupada is the founder of Hare Krishna movement. He's again giving it through this Bhagavad Gita as it is. And what is that knowledge that is missing? Everybody is missing this knowledge of soul. So it is very important to understand what this soul is all about. Unfortunately, the soul is not visible to the material eyes, to the material elements. Even when we go to the doctor, they do X-ray, they do MRI scanning, all kind of things. Nobody is actually able to see the soul. They're only seeing, external body, the bones, the lungs, and different nerves and arteries and veins. They're cutting the body and they're seeing inside everything, but they don't find the soul, because soul is spiritual in nature. That means it's completely not material. So it is not perceivable by the material senses. And that is why, and we can only perceive matter, and we have no experience of spirit other than understanding. So Krishna is trying to define the soul by the principle of negation. Sometimes when we can't explain what it is, we can explain by saying what it is not. Right? So here Krishna is saying he's using the principle of definition by negation by telling what the soul is not about. He's giving further information to Arjuna and all of us. What is this soul? It is nothing like the matter. It cannot be cut into pieces. Nainam chindanti shastrani. It is eternal. It is actually indestructible. Okay, it cannot be cut into pieces, but maybe it can get burnt. Why is Krishna specifically saying about these four things, right? Cut into pieces, burned by fire, moistened by water, and dried by wind. Prabhupada actually explains in the purport. See, this was in the battlefield, right? And in the battlefield, he was worried about the death of the opposite people, right? And the death in battle generally happens through these different modes, right? They use the weapons, they use the knives, they use the swords, and they fight. And sometimes the opponent is actually cut, through the sword, is cut into pieces. So Krishna is saying, don't worry, even though that kind of fight happens, the soul is not going to get cut into pieces. Well, is it just that? Then what about fire? There are weapons of fire. And these are all different kinds of weapons also. There are weapons of fire, and Prabhupada is saying even the modern weapons, they are all, they can be classified into the category of weapons of fire. The atomic weapons, the nuclear weapons, they're all weapons of fire, right? They create a nuclear fusion reaction with all those nuclear elements, and there's a triggering, and then there is a lot of fire and heat that comes, right? So that is one of the kind of weapon. But the other kind of weapons also Arjuna is mentioning, and there are actually references in Mahabharata. And people who have seen these Mahabharata episodes, the TV episodes, they could have actually seen there are weapons of water also. And Prabhupada and the Mahabharata, it explains that when a weapon of fire is launched by one party, it is actually counteracted. Right? Today, if somebody puts a atom bomb or a nuclear weapon, there is no counteraction. People have to suffer. But during those days, they were so advanced, they could actually counteract the weapon of fire by putting a weapon of water, something that is cool and water that can actually counteract the effect of the heat, right? Just like if there is a flame, there is fire, if you immediately put water, you can extinguish it, right? So a weapon of fire can be extinguished by a weapon of water. And there are references in Mahabharata where whenever a weapon of fire was used, The opponent party, if he was capable enough, he would actually use a weapon of water and actually subjugate it, counteract it. Right? That is one of the weapon. And so that is why Nai Chainam Kledyanti Apo, even the water, it cannot wet. So he's saying, don't worry, even if a weapon of water is used, the soul is not going to get wet and soaked and disappeared. Right? So many things, they will be very strong in other atmospheric conditions, but if they get wet, they go bad. Right? So Krishna is saying, no, neither the soul can be get wet. And then he says, Na sosayati marutaha, even wind cannot dry it up. And again, why is this mentioned? Because there are actually weapons of wind also. There are weapons that can create tornadoes. Again, there are references in Mahabharata where sometimes weapons of made of wind, air, the tornadoes were launched, and it would create havoc in the opposing army. It would create disturbance, and the tornado would completely disrupt the enemy's army. So these are the different kind of weapons, and it is a point of reference for us to think. Bhagavad Gita was spoken 5,000 years ago. Mahabharata happened like 5,000 years ago. And the general understanding is we as human beings, we are advancing in civilization, we are advancing in technology. We are now more advanced than we ever were. But this actually puts us a challenge. Are we really that advanced as we think? Because there are references of weapons of water and air and wind. We have not yet identified those. There are references to counteracting one kind of weapon with a different weapon. Now we have a missile defense system. Right? What it tries to do is it tries to intercept it and kind of blow up the missile in the air. But that's the best we could get it, and that is also unfortunately so much flawed that it doesn't seem to accurately work. But we have not yet invented weapons of water that can counteract a weapon of heat. We have not yet invented weapons of wind which can actually create tornadoes. Right? Today, tornadoes come. There is literally nothing that one can do than run away from them. But there were weapons of tornadoes. Definitely, there will be a weapon to counteract those tornadoes also. So it's a question, right? Seems like 5,000 years ago, there was signs of even higher level of advancement in technology in warfare. Actually, actually over here. So it's a question to think: are we really advanced? Right. So that is one aspect of the soul. And this soul, as mentioned earlier, it's good to even recollect that the soul being not at all material, it's even its dimension is mentioned. It is said that you know uh, balagrasya shatabhagasya shatada kalpitarasyo. So that means the tip of the hair, if you take the hair and you take a tip and you cut it by 100 pieces, cut it into 100 pieces, and then you further cut it into 100 pieces. That is like you take the tip of a hair and cut it by 10,000 pieces. How small it is, that small is the dimension of the soul. So even if you have some kind of a device to see, first of all, it is not even perceivable by material senses. And even if you can somehow think you can perceive, it is so small that even its dimension makes it imperceivable. That is why we see life in even in the smallest beings, right? Sometimes we see on a small old book, you see there's a small dot kind of a thing. It is actually moving. It is a small bug. It has life in it. Not only that, even the smallest bacterias, like the amoeba, or even very small bacteria, there is life in them. It is actually moving, right? The consciousness proves this, the presence of the soul. Even the bacteria, there is a live bacteria and there is a dead bacteria. If the bacteria is alive, it is moving and it is reproducing. And if you somehow sterilize it, whatever, the bacteria dies, it loses its thing. So the soul is so small that it can go even into a smallest of the bacteria that is not even perceivable to the eyes. So that is one of the aspect, the dimension of the soul is mentioned. So, and the other thing Prabhupada touches upon in the second paragraph of the purport is about the the fact, he's stressing on the fact that Krishna very clearly says that the soul cannot be cut into pieces. So this is a very important aspect, especially touching upon a different philosophy of spiritual understanding, which is called the Mayavadi philosophy. The Mayavadi say that the soul is actually, in a temporary illusion. It has been cut, apart from the supreme spirit soul, and it just has to merge back into it. Now, first thing is they can't, they say that the total, original existence is called Brahman, where there is this bright effulgence which is compared to like the God, the infinite energy, and we are all part of the Brahman. and we just don't realize that we are the Brahman. And if we can merge back into the Brahman, that is our state of self realization, like going back to the Brahman. Now, one thing is, they cannot explain, if we were actually part of this bright light effulgence Brahman, how did we even fall down in the first place, right? Why would it fall down and then get covered by these different levels of layers of illusion, and then again go through the whole hassle of going back? There is no explanation for that philosophy, and that whole philosophy itself is defied by this verse, because that philosophy entertains the fact that the soul could be cut from the Brahman, and then it is fallen into this material world, and it can merge back, it can again amalgamate back into the original Brahman. But here Krishna says the atomic individual souls, they're Sanatana, Nitya Shashvato. Krishna says earlier that this soul, the living being, was always present in the past, it's present now, and it will present in the future also. So Prabhupada is saying this Mayavadi philosophy of the soul merging back into the Brahman is incomplete. It does not explain the total existence of the soul. And and Krishna is saying that the soul cannot be cut into pieces. Now, if something cannot be cut into pieces, how can it be joined again, right? Individual being is individual, independent, eternal being. So there is no question of merging back and amalgamating. Actually, they give an example of it is called gatakas patakas. In the sense, is if there is a pot, in a pot there is air in the pot, and there is air outside the pot, right? So because the pot is also holding air, there is a air that is not in touch with the rest of the air, because the border of the pot is blocking that air to amalgamate, right? And then say if you break the pot, the air merges into the rest of the air, and that is how they explain liberation. This body is like that pot, and when you liberate yourself, you just merge into it. But that is wrong, because the individual being has its own individuality. The individuality is never lost. We are all individual being. Every living being, all of us, we have our own individuality, which defines our personality. Everybody have their own different kinds of likings and thinking, feeling, willing, different ways, different activities, different varieties in each and other. And when different people come together, all these different varieties, variegatedness get together, we do amazing things. And there is actually joy derived from these varieties, right? If there are friends here, there's a gathering, right? If the social distancing is removed, what do people do? They just call one friend to get together. They will call all friends, as many as possible, all friends, all variety. The more the variety, the more joy is there, right? So there is variety, there is individuality. Everyone has their own individual situation. So this philosophy of merging into Brahman, right, is improper. But still, there are a class of spiritualists who actually pursue that. They deeply believe in it, and they try to actually attain liberation by trying to merge into Brahman effulgence. So, what is this Brahman effulgence? Is this completely, totally wrong? Actually, it is an impartial understanding of the total absolute truth. It is said in Srimad Bhagavatam, the absolute truth, the tattvataha, the absolute truth, the absolute knowledge of understanding of God and his energies is in three phases. It is said, Vadanti tat tattvidas tattvam yat jnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdyate. So Brahman. So there is this aspect of Brahman which is mentioned in the Vedic literature, but it is just the one of the aspect. It is actually a inferior aspect, or it is an exterior aspect, but there are interior aspects also. There is Brahman is just a one of the aspect of the total absolute truth. It is not all in all, it is not complete. There is Brahman, there is Paramatma, and there is Bhagavan. So Bhagavan is the personality of Godhead. And what is Brahman? Brahman is the effulgence of the supreme personality of Godhead. So that's why when we see pictures of the deities like Lord Krishna or Lord Rama, we see this bright effulgence around them, right? The deity, the Lord is self-effulgent. There is a glowing effulgence coming out of the Lord's body, and this effulgence is actually the Brahman effulgence. The Vedic scriptures give an example of the sun and the sunlight. So Brahman is not invalid, or it is not untruth. It is not false. It is true, but it is not all in all. It is not everything. Just like sunlight cannot be denied. But if you say sunlight is everything, then that is incomplete understanding of sun. Sunlight is being emanated from the sun. So there is a personal existence of the sun also. In the same way, there is a personal existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and this Brahman effulgence is just the bodily effulgence of the Supreme Lord. But these people who want to attain liberation by merging into Brahman, what happens is Krishna actually facilitates that. He says, if that is all you want, if you want to merge into Brahman, you cannot lose your individuality, but you can definitely give away your material body. And the spirit soul, you can just go and you can merge in the Brahman. You can go and sit in that bright light, right? And you can imagine that you have merged into this bright light, but you are actually an individual soul. So this is called Sahajya Mukti, where the spirit soul, it gives up this material body, it takes up severe austerities, and it goes and sits in this Brahman effulgence, and it goes beyond this material world, material sphere. And because it is the bodily effulgence of the Supreme Lord, in the spiritual world where there are spiritual planets, and in the spiritual planets there is the spiritual, the Supreme Lord, Lord Krishna, Lord Rama, and performing their leelas along with his devotees. They are there inside in the spiritual world, but the effulgence, there is a bright effulgence outside the spiritual world, which is the bodily effulgence of the Supreme Lord. Just like outside the sun, immediately there is this bright sunlight. So what happens is these people who want to attain this Brahman realization, they're given an opportunity to go and sit in the bright light. They don't even know that behind the bright light where they are, the source of the bright light is actually the spiritual world, in which there are spiritual planets, and in which there is the Supreme Lord and his devotees and his associates. They don't know that, they are not aware of it. They just think they are in this bright light. It is just like the sun is behind you, you're sitting in sunshine, and you're seeing there is sunlight all around you. You think this is it, I am in the sun, or this is all everything. But you don't realize that there is this huge planet or a star behind you, from where, which is the source of the sunlight, right? So it is improper understanding. And it is said that the realization that the soul gets when they go to the Brahman effulgence, because the soul is looking for variety, the soul feels good. It is actually said as Brahmananda when they go there, that they don't feel any pangs of material existence. They don't feel the misery of birth. They don't feel the misery of, because the body is not there. They don't feel the misery of old age. They don't feel the misery of disease. They don't feel the misery of death. It actually feels very good, right? Just like if somebody is very diseased, very badly diseased, you have so many problems, from head to toe. You have headache, you have body pains, you have joint pains, you have muscle aches, all kinds of miseries if you have, right? The self-realized, the spiritualistic person realizes that this body is the source of all miseries. If I can somehow get rid of this body, I won't have all these problems. Just like a very unhealthy person, the moment he starts feeling, you know negation of all these pains, all pains are gone, is completely happy, he feels good, right? So this is the nature, this is the happiness that the Sayujya Mukti, when they go and they merge into the Brahman effulgence, they get. They feel good that all the material miseries are gone. But then there is another problem. They can't stay there for long. Why? Because it is not just that the nature of the soul, it is not that we are only looking for no misery. We are also looking for enjoyment. Just like a healthy person, once he gets free from all kind of illnesses, it's not just that he will sit idle. He wants to attain some joy by some variety, by involving in some activity, right? But that is missing in the Brahman effulgence. Those people who have attained Sayujya Mukti, they're only feeling that there is no material misery, but there is no enjoyment, there is no joy, because there is no variety, there is no activity. But the nature of the soul is actually to derive pleasure by performing activities, right? Just like we talked, unhealthy person, he becomes healthy, he won't just sit idle all his life, rest of his life. Now he will think, oh, I'm all good. I can go walking, I can go biking, I can go trekking, I can go on trips, I can, meet with friends, I can play sports, I can play games, I can, have fun, right? That is what is missing in the spiritual, the Brahman effulgence. That is why it is said that even though one goes all the way to the spiritual world, he will actually not stay there for long. It is said, Aruhya Krichena Parampadam. That means Krichena means after undergoing severe austerities, they perform severe penances. They want to merge into the bright light. They will sit and they will meditate. Sometimes they'll meditate on a lamp, on a light, or something. they're not devotees of the Lord actually. They're just meditating. They just want, because they don't even know that there is something called a Lord that exists. They think all the forms of the Lord are just, a forms made so that we can just comprehend. Because we can't comprehend this bright light, we just make a form, and this form is just a way to, help us meditate on the impersonal bright light. So they never actually accept the individual, the presence of the Supreme Lord. So what happens? Arohya Krichena Parampadam. Even if they go to the topmost, liberation of merging into the Brahman effulgence, it is said Patanti Yadaha. They will fall down. And why they will fall down? Anadrata Yasmat Angrayaha. Because they have never gotten a taste of service to your lotus feet. So this is a prayer being offered to the Lord. It is being said that even people who attain that, what happens is they are not deriving any enjoyment. There is no activity. There is no activity. There is no relishment. There is no, nature. There is no joy in their activities. So then what happens? Patanti adaha, they fall down again. So even if one goes all the way back to the, up to the Brahman effulgence in the spiritual world, they liberate themselves from this material world. They are out of the cycle of birth, death, disease, and old age. But because they have not entered into the spiritual world, because they have not acknowledged, they have not cultivated their devotion to the Supreme Lord, they will actually fall down again to the material world. And once they come to the material world, because they don't have any bad karma, they will be given a very good life. They'll be born in a very rich family, in a very healthy, wealthy family with all good abilities. Or they might go into heavenly planets, but slowly they will come down again to the earthly planet. And again, they will get stuck up in the cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. So that is why, even in spiritual liberation, in spiritual progress, one should be very clear on this understanding. One should know this, the Lord by tattva. This tattva, that there is Brahma, Brahman, there is Paramatma, and there is Bhagavan. There are three aspects. Brahman is just one aspect. Paramatma is the aspect of the Supreme Lord in everyone's heart and in every atom and every soul. The presence of Lord everywhere. Just like, the presence of sunshine is there everywhere. Even though we don't see the sunshine, even in the shade, for example, even in the night time, everything is actually working because of sunlight. In this world, if there is no sunlight, this world will not be going on as it is. It would be just a dead dull, like a dead dull stone, this whole earth. It is because of sunlight the water is being evaporated. Because of sunlight, there is rain. Because of rain, there are, growth of plants. There is photosynthesis. There is, plants and animals and living beings and life and everything. It's all just because of sunlight. If there is no sunlight, the life would end. It would just become so dull. So the understanding of Paramatma is the presence of the Lord everywhere in every aspect, which is what makes this whole, universe and world around us animated. But that is also incomplete understanding. There has to be understanding of Bhagavan, and this understanding is very not very easy. Krishna himself says, "Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavam mam prapadyate." After bahunam janmanam, after many many janma, bahunam, after many many janmas, one can actually come to the understand Jnanavam. After many many janma, Jnanavan, one who had understood all knowledge. What does he say? Jnanavam mam prapadyate. They actually surrender to the Supreme Lord Krishna. And what do they say? Vasudeva Sarvamati. Oh Vasudeva, oh Krishna, you are actually everything. It is not just this Brahman or this or that or material nature or energies or elements or anything. It is actually you who are everything. And that Krishna himself says, Brahmanaham Pratishtha. He says, I am the source of Brahman. He says, Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo. I am the source of everything. Matta Sarvam Pravartate. Everything actually is in my energies. So this understanding is not easy. Bahunam Janmanamante Jnanamam Mam Prapadyate. It takes many, many lifetimes. Another place also Krishna says, coming to this understanding, you know, not many people actually know this. He says, Manushyanam Sahasreshu. Manushyanam means all the Manushya, the human beings, Sahasreshu, hundreds and thousands of there. Kashchit Yatati Siddhaye. Of this, rarely somebody attains perfection of life. Perfection of life means understanding that I am not this body, I am this soul, I am unnecessarily being stuck in this cycle of repeated birth, death, old age, and disease. I should work towards spiritual liberation where I can free the soul from these material clutches. This is actually Siddha. See, even those people who attain the self realization, the Sayujya Mukti, go to the Brahman effulgence, they are also, in one sense, they are considered Siddhis because they have attained some perfection, but it is still incomplete. That's why Krishna says, Manushyanam Sahasreshu Kaschit Yatati Siddhaye. Out of so many hundreds, thousands of Manushya, only some people attain perfection. But yatatam api siddhanam, out of all these siddhis, kashchit mam vetti tattvataha. Only very few know me. Kashchit mam vetti means to know tattvataha, in absolute truth, in absolute knowledge. That means not just Brahman, there is Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So this is the important aspect. One has to know the Lord in tattvataha. Just knowing the Lord, just knowing one aspect of, oh, there is a bright effulgence, there is a bright energy, this is what God is all about, is not complete. We have to know in tattvataha. And the question comes, how do we know in tattvataha? Krishna is saying here, Bahunam Janmanam, oh, many, many lifetimes I might have to take. Or then he's saying, Manushyanam Sahasreshu, Kaschit Yatiti, Yatatam api Siddhanam, Kaschin Mam Vetti Tattataha. Out of many, many, only few people know me. Oh, this seems to be very difficult then. How do we understand? How do we attain perfection of life? Right? Is the question that comes. And that Krishna actually answers. He says, this knowledge, Tadviddi Pranipatena Pariprashnena Sevaya Upadekshanti Te Jnanam Gnaninas Tattvadarshinaha. So this knowledge we can attain, but there is a process. What is the process of attaining this knowledge? Tadviddi pranipatena. One has to surrender. Pranipatena means pratrishta rupena nipatena. Surrender, completely surrender. To whom? Pranipatena pariprashnena. One has to question, has to inquire. They have to get their answers. From whom? Whom one should surrender and whom one should inquire from. Right? Tadviddi pranipatena pariprashnena sevya. One should do service also. One should serve this, you know. Oh, whom do we serve? What is this? Whom do we surrender? Whom do we question? Whom do we serve? Right? Tadvitti pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam. Upadekshanti te jnanam. Then you will get this knowledge. This knowledge you can actually learn from Tattvadarshinaha. Upadekshanti te jnanam gnaninas Tattvadarshinaha. The, the knowledgeable person who is a Tattvadarshinaha, who has actually seen this truth. That is the self realized spiritual master. So we have to approach, if we want to know in Tattvataha, if we want to attain the actual, complete, perfect, realization of spiritual, perfection, we have to surrender to a spiritual master, a spiritual being who is Tattvadarshinaha, who has actually seen the truth. And then what happens? If we actually surrender to that person, you know, he would actually upadekshanti te jnanam. He would actually instruct us in that knowledge. So that knowledge is very important. We need to be instructed in the knowledge. Without knowing the knowledge, how will we know? Krishna says, actually, who knows me? Bhaktya mam avijanati yavan yaschasmi tattvataha. Only my devotees can know me in completeness. So we have to become devotee of Krishna. Then if you say, oh, then I can easily become devotee. Why surrender to somebody and all? Because people think devotee means just some sentiment, some devotion. Oh, I like Krishna. Oh, okay, I will worship Krishna. But actually, you can't love someone unless you know that person. If I suddenly introduce you to some Mr. So and so, oh, he's Mr. So and so, can you please start loving him? You'll be like, what? Who is this person? What is this person? How can I love him? I don't even know him. Then if I tell some glories about this person, he is so and so, he did so much, he is the reason for which this has happened, that has happened, and he has actually, he's one of the main cause even for your own personal benefits that you're enjoying. Then you will cultivate some respect and admiration, adoration, and then you can actually love him. Oh, is he the one? Oh, because of him, we are all actually enjoying this. He's the whatever, the governor or the state or whatever. Then you can actually start, showing some admiration, and you can then love. In the same way, loving Krishna is not just a blind sentiment. I go to some nearest Krishna temple or I have a picture of Krishna and I'll start worshipping him. I will somehow love him. No, we have to know him in Tattvataha. And once you know that Tattva, Krishna says, Janma karma chame divyam jo janati Tattvataha taktya deham punarjanmaneti mameti. Once you know Krishna in Tattvataha, Krishna is saying punarjanmaneti. You will naturally get liberated. Mameti, you will come to me. So it is very important to know Krishna in Tattvataha, and that is possible by taking instruction from a self-realized spiritual master. And in this Hare Krishna movement, we are all very fortunate when we are reading the books of Swami Prabhupada, when we are listening to his lectures, and when we are understanding the Vedic literature given by Swami Prabhupada, we are actually associating with the pure devotee, with the spiritual master, and we are actually learning the truth from him. Prabhupada said, I am there in my books. I have invested, I have made myself available in my books. Sometimes they would say, oh, Prabhupada is not there anymore. How can I ask him a question? How can I get answer? Well, even when Prabhupada was here, he was always traveling. He was not very accessible to devotees where they can just walk in any time and ask a question. So they would actually write letter to Prabhupada. How can we get answers to our questions? You're always traveling. You're not accessible to us. Prabhupada said, all my answers I have given in my books. I have made myself available in my books. You just continue reading or you read again, you will get your answer. And from 1960 till today, like 20, 50 years, from 1966 till now, like 54 years, Prabhupada was present, is present in his books, and he continues to answer various questions and, help various devotees understand this Tattva Gnana and actually attain, perfection in their life. So we all should, take this very important aspect of understanding this knowledge of self realization from a pure devotee, from a spiritual master, by actually accessing him. And Srila Prabhupada, the founder of the Hare Krishna movement, he has made himself accessible through his books and his teachings. Even his recorded audio lectures are there. We can actually get benefit out of it. And our effort of discussing these topics in this on a weekly basis, on a regular manner, is to somehow inspire all of you also to start reading Prabhupada's books and actually hear directly from the pure devotee, Tattva Darshinaha, one who has seen the Lord, one who has realized the truth, because from him we can get absolute knowledge. Everyone else, we can all help you, a little bit, we can give some impetus, but the real knowledge, the true revelation will happen when we get in touch with the pure devotee, the spiritual master. So, that is a very important takeaway. This knowledge, the complete knowledge is very much important for all of us, and we can get it by surrendering to the pure devotee. And the pure devotee, what does the pure devotee do? Does he do some magic that suddenly you will get it? One day you go, some magic happens? No. He gives us the processes and mechanisms which are given by Krishna himself. He just reiterates those and he puts us into some practical practices with which we can realize God. Like Krishna says, Manmana bhava madbhakto majjaji mam namaskaru. He tells Arjuna directly, right? Arjuna did not go to any other spiritual master. He was directly getting instruction from Krishna himself. Now, how did Arjuna become realized? What was instruction to Arjuna? Manmana bhava madbhakto. Always think of me, chant my name, remember my name, and become my devotee and worship me. And what does the pure devotee, the spiritual master, like what does Swami Prabhupada do? What does he say? It is an open secret. There is nothing hidden. If we read his books, we get the same instruction. He says, always chant the holy name of the Lord. Chant the Hare Krishna mantra, right? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This chanting of the holy name of the Lord is the same thing exactly recommended by Lord Krishna in the 18th chapter, 65th verse. He says, always think of me, remember me, and worship me. And it is very interestingly, the spiritual master actually repeats the same thing that Krishna says, but he elaborates it. He gives very scientific explanation, practical guidance, very detailed instructions in this day and time of life. How do we chant his name? How do we worship him? How do we remember him? The same thing that Krishna says, the spiritual master elaborates it further and makes it into a practical guidance and instruction for us to follow in our day-to-day life. And that is what we get when we get in touch with the pure devotee. And by following those practices, which are again not invented by the spiritual master, they are actually repeated exactly as what the Krishna says. Srila Prabhupada himself said, the spiritual master is the transparent via media of the Supreme Lord. So it is a transparent via medium. It is just the same medium, the same message being presented again for our understanding. And by following this, by accepting the spiritual master, by following his instructions, by their mercy, by their association, we will actually slowly become perfect in self realization. We can attain, we can understand the Lord, and then we can get rid of all kinds of misgivings about liberation, that there is a Brahman, there is an effulgence, we have to merge and this and that. We get even deeper insights into the spiritual world, into the spiritual planets, about the spiritual bodies. And the ultimate perfection of realization is getting rid of this material body, which is constantly under struggle of existence, where there is birth, death, old age, disease, and getting a spiritual body which has no birth, no disease, no old age, no death, and entering into the spiritual world in the spiritual body, and experiencing loving devotional association and activities and variety and enjoyment with the Supreme Lord Krishna Himself in the spiritual world. That is the ultimate perfection. Once we go there, we will never fall down. But if you go to Brahma Jyoti, we will fall down. And this I didn't make it up. Krishna says, Yad gatva na nivartante tad dhamam paramam mama. Once you come to me from where you will never go away, that is my place. Right? Mamupetya punarjanma na vidyate. Once you come to me, you will never have another birth. So that is the ultimate destination. We should all work towards that. And the first step is understanding this knowledge of the soul, of the Supreme Soul, of the various aspects of the Supreme Lord, of the various practices that we should do, of various rules and regulations that we should follow, and taking the guidance and instructions of the spiritual master slowly but steadily but surely one will attain success, because that is the formula given by Lord Krishna himself. So I will stop here, and I will end with saying, requesting all of you to chant the Hare Krishna mantra regularly, to read Srila Prabhupada's books, to take his guidance, take advantage of this Hare Krishna movement. Prabhupada opened hundreds of temples, he has written hundreds of books for all of us, for everyone to actually become advanced in the process of self realization and actually to get perfection in this very own life. In the earlier other verses, Krishna says, Bahunam Janmanam Ante, right? We don't have to worry about many, many lives. One life is sufficient if you do it the right way. But if you do the wrong way, is when many, many lives are required, right? If you do the right way, you take a right direction. If you have to go east to go to a place, if you are in the right direction, you will go there very soon. But if you take wrong direction, if you go west, then you will have to go very far. After a very, very long time, you will realize and you will again turn east and go, right? So in one very life, Prabhupada says, in this very lifetime, it is possible to attain perfection, but we just have to follow the instructions, follow the guidance, and understand the truth, and be self-realized, not sentimental. Devotional service is known as Buddhi Yoga. Buddhi means intelligence. We have to surrender to the Lord, definitely. We have to worship the Lord, definitely. We have to love the Lord, definitely, but not with sentiment, but with intelligence. And that intelligence and that knowledge is available in Bhagavad Gita and explained by the spiritual masters. So we should all take advantage. So I'll stop here. Thank you very much. We will take. We will meet again on another session. But meanwhile, continue chanting Hare Krishna and read Bhagavad Gita and take advantage of Swami Prabhupada's teachings and his books and make your life perfect. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Jai Shila Prabhupada.